yes, these platforms are addictive. I think we all accept that and agree. But as someone who works within those companies, as someone who designs them especially, because obviously they're not going away, new ones are going to be created, then do not send or stop, please stop sending children content that you wouldn't want your own children to see. And I think that's a really simple request, and it's an easy fix. But again, as the dads up here said, well, it's all about the bottom line.
Right.
But if the shareholders of these companies can accept that they're going to get a little less profit out of it to make it a safe space, then that would stop the suffering.
Sometimes recollections may vary, sometimes they don't, and you can assume that you're dealing with a very, very stupid person who's making up fables, which goes with, of course, what you've been told in the media. Or you can simply realize that there is a man who has enormous privileges given to him beyond our understanding of him and his role and his purpose, shall we say. Beyond that, and exploiting his privileges to control and change global communications, information, and censorship through social media platforms and digital platforms, obviously. In 2023, we had Todge tell everyone that he helps to design. He doesn't even say help. He says that he designs social media platforms. He designs social media platforms. And with what we know about J6 and his information from intelligence within America, and his regular communications with Jack Dorsey back when he was CEO of Twitter, and also he's had some attempts to have debates and conversations with Elon Musk in Twitter. You can see that Todge is not who you think he is. Todge is something more. Todge is protected. And Todge is not just changing global policy, he's also literally working towards it through platforms that are connected to intelligence. Both Todge and his wife have been advocating toward a new social media platform, or in plural, platforms. They are co-designing after all of these WEF-backed anti-online hate speech, anti-freedom of speech, pro-info control and censorship bills as per our governments, UK, Canada, USA, Australia. I don't know about New Zealand, but I'm sure they're in there because it is all along across the Five Eyes. Bills as per our governments are rolled out. They are the WEF. And probably they are bigger than the WEF. How do I know this? Because they are pushing WEF-backed reports to push policy in Australia, and the submissions to pass our bills are WEF-backed, like Reset Australia's submissions in our misinformation bill. Our WEF Australian Parliament is striving to push to control us. This, of course, was before the bill was passed, which was passed, and before the letter was sent to the King and to government officials in Australia about the treason committed that I had exposed. And, of course, no responses there. This is the initial post I had when I found out. Yeah, it's still hard. When I found out that this report here that Archwell had funded through Jeremy Hymans, who was an Australian citizen, now is either an American and Australian dual citizen or is just a solo American citizen who works for the WEF and he created the structure of soft power and promoted it. He was the first to lead and initiate the climate change protests and movement in 2014. So imagine this sort of person and who you're dealing with. It's a global situation. It's not Australian. And this was all at Davos as well, by the way, with that Virgin founder. He was sitting with him, and Russell Brand was helping with the advertisements for the fake protests that was meant to be like, non-for-profit kind of movements, people or society oriented, when really they were just fronts. Anyway, this is the report that was funded by Archwell, by Purpose and Jeremy Hymans and Oz Reset, which is then under the global company Luminate, Capgemini, which are WEF partners, Purpose Asia Pacific, is not particularly Australian. Not necessarily. It's definitely funded by private companies and foreign donors. And it's all connected to the Omidyar Group, who I think, were they the ones who created eBay? I think they were. Also a WEF member and partner. All of this, basically these false Soros non-for-profits in Australia that are meant to be research organisations infiltrated our government and our policy changes and changed these bills with, for example, this report and these submissions. And our fifth in line to our throne, the Commonwealth, has been directly implicated. And also the USA, funnily enough. It just doesn't seem like it's UK alone involved in this. It feels like it's all across the Five Eyes. I will just give you the introduction of the high treason video that I recommend you watching, which explains all of what I've just said to you about this one particular report that Todge has directly ingratiated himself in with foreign interference, treachery and high treason against Britain, against their parliament and against the king, except for it's been permitted. Still high treason, still punishable by a life of imprisonment and removal of all titles and lands. Here we go.
Hi everyone. It's been a while, and I thank you so much for your patience. I've done a lot of research lately, and I haven't been putting videos up. Just trying to contact certain people and so forth. So it's been a bit of a long wait, and I really appreciate your patience and sticking around. This video is going to be in response to something that I particularly find personally very sad, very, very upsetting. That's quite emotional for me, which is about the report on hate speech by Australian the Australian subsidiary Purpose Asia Pacific, founded by Jeremy Hymans, who is either a now American citizen or a dual American-Australian citizen. And this report was funded by Archewell, by the Prince Fifth in line to my monarchy, and by the Duchess of Sussex, who is an American citizen. And obviously Archewell is a US public charity that is registered. And they've funded this report for policy change in Australia, calling our policies ill-equipped. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this, but I feel that it hasn't been given the gravitas that it has really necessarily been needed. I think people really need to think about this and understand that no other nation is superior to the other. No other nation is superior to Australia right now. We have freedom of speech. It's in our constitutional rights, especially between the monarchy and our parliament. That is how the Commonwealth was founded. The reason why it was founded is because we wanted an independent nation that reserved our freedom and our equality. Exactly those two terms. And any imposition on our freedoms needs to be taken very, very seriously. And this is about freedom of speech. What I'm going to talk to you today about is why this is such a problem. Why this is what I consider by our laws treachery and foreign interference. And I'll go through that as well, along with, matters of the IRS in America to the Treason Act 1351 in UK Parliament. These are things that we can consider, that we can really talk about all together. What I want to come out of this with all of us is that this is a shared voice. It doesn't matter what nation you're from. If you are involved in this whole issue with this duo and the monarchy, and you're a proud royalist, if you're just an Australian wanting freedom, wanting to keep your freedom, if you're, an American, someone who's British, who's just dealt with those bills in Parliament that impose upon their freedom of speech, this is all relatable to everyone. It's universal, this issue, and I want you to share this. I hope you can share this with people, with journalists, with media, because this discourse needs to open up. And it needs to be given, again, its proper gravitas, especially legally. This is a very, very big issue. It's a big issue for me personally, but it's a big issue for Australia and for the world.
For over 2 years, well, at the time, so now 3 years, Todd has proven he has political affiliations with social media executives, that he's involved and has pre-advocated everything that is being pushed in front of us now as government mandate that is simultaneously happening in Australia, UK, and I'm sure Canada, USA, and New Zealand at the time in late 2023. This is what's interesting. Push for speech. I'm just having a read of this. Yeah, so at the time, in late 2023, the UK bill was waiting for the King's approval. It's globalist agenda. It's non-localized. It's happening throughout the Five Eyes. It's been happening for a while. And you have a prince pushing it. But, also you have the heir pushing it with climate change. You have the king pushing it with climate change and all of those wind farms that he owns now. And in 2025, his profits or his income is very impacted by those wind farms and so forth. And it's interesting because, where is it here? Oh, this is it here. Tudge exploited and has been exploiting children's safety as a means to protest information control measures. And he used the Capitol riots J6 to protest it prior, before he even used children and his wife's harassment as lame excuses. And of course, you know, his safety and his security issues and misinformation for the vaxxers and COVID and anything he could get his little grubby hands on. An absolute simp. 2021, 22nd, didn't take long. Time is running out. Prince Harry calls for social media reform after US Capitol riot. That was the reason why he spoke to that Wired company, or that Levi or Levi guy, Stephen Levi, because he's trying to push policy. He's trying to push social media reform. That's why he brought that up. It's not a slip. Tudge is intelligent. Believe it or not, he knows what the fuck he's doing. And he's doing it protected, enabled, backed, supported. And he's got everything at his fingertips. Access to all information across countries. You don't need to challenge or argue the fact that he has IPP. He has IPP. The son of a king. Do you really think the son of a king, the grandson of a queen, wouldn't have IPP? If he is in US, that is. I mean, he would have it anyway. Barkjack, a Twitter account that is meant to be two Italian journalists that have had, you know, decades of a career in Italy, which isn't true. They aren't Italian, or this person isn't Italian at all. They're either American or they're Canadian. I think they're American. They pretend to be two Italian journalists giving out information, insider information on celebrities, but they were most famous for the duo. And Barkjack in February 2023 decided to let us know that, thinking that this was okay because they're not a journalist and they don't know what protocol would be, decided to let us know that the royal family or the monarchy, under their intelligence, are investigating social media, the social media platform, to filter any, I think, attacks, disinformation, misinformation about, I think they were excusing it for Catherine and William. I think that was the case. They were trying to make it a thing. But if you notice here, oh yeah, they're trying to expose. This was around the Boozy era, and they were going to expose the pair. And I think they're monitoring, or their own infiltration supposedly of Twitter, you know, through all their bots and stuff. I think that was what this was about. I'm sorry, it's been a long time. And Barkjack, the fake two Italian journalists, explains to the public that investigations are always ongoing, which is surprising that this person knows all about royal intelligence. MI6 investigations. It would have to be Scotland Yard. I mean, I'm not sure who or what, But this would be, they're talking about the royal family and the monarchy investigating social media. Investigations are always ongoing. Security is always on alert. Based on what I know, definitely not yet and disappointing for some, shall likely drag way into 2024. How does this person know this information? If it's an ongoing investigation as well, why would you impose yourself there and then publicly announce it? But then how can you tell everyone that investigations are ongoing? That means there's no real investigation or explanation. There's no actual real issue or case. They're just monitoring social media. Full stop. Here. Barkjack. Line of succession matter looks to drag on to 2025 to 2026 to fully address. There is a separate investigation I mentioned regarding defamatory online activity, dealt with at this time privately, internally with social giants. So they are partnering with social media, whoever this is, to investigate something, supposedly a case. But the investigations are ongoing and are always ongoing. Let that sink in. Dealt with at this time privately, internally, yep, and continually monitored and may factor into future operations. What does that mean? May factor into future operations. Have you not just exposed yourself, Barkjack? I asked for an explanation. I continually asked, and they just attacked me. I said, how is this legal? How are you not being sued? Insane. Don't forget who tipped you off to the fact that there are ongoing investigations into targeted social media manipulation against the royal family. You read it first. Yeah. Absolutely. We had technological analysts do an investigation and uncovered a lot. So they actually imposed themselves on the investigation. They tampered with the investigation by the royal family, partnered with social media giants. Make it make sense. Oh yes, this is the background. There we go. So you may ask yourself at this point, why so much foreign interference, treachery and treason being permitted across the Five Eyes and their governments? It's not for the people, that is for sure. And there is an ulterior, self-serving motive that is about the elitists controlling our liberties. Since 2020, for 3 years now, Todge and Nutt, via their non-for-profit US charity Archewell, has sought to change online policies around hate speech. This is, believe it or not, during their time living at Tyler Perry's house when they were just trying to regulate and recover from the mass security issues they had and being watched by helicopters. Actually, this is June. Yeah, so this is straight after Fauci's birthday. Remember the helicopters appearing? Them being really stressed out, them being scared for their lives and for their privacy and safety. Prince Todge had to redesign. So he's literally still saying from 2020 up until 2023, he's been redesigning social media. He just told you in the first video that he was designing new social media platforms. And then with J6, he told you that he had intelligence regarding social media analytics and monitoring and censorship, the same sort of thing that Barkjack's talking about regarding the royal family's investigations. A little over 4 weeks ago. Just when exactly is that from? Oh, this is American date, isn't it? 6, so August? Yep, August. 4 weeks before that would be July, which is when they just moved in to Montecito. So let me rephrase that. It was when they moved into Montecito. I think they moved in on the 1st of July, supposedly, according to the Netflix narrative. And then lost the baby straight after. So when she was suffering a miscarriage, or miscarriage, shall we say, this is what Nut was really doing. My wife and I started calling business leaders, heads of major corporations, and chief marketing officers at brands and organizations we all use in our daily lives. Our message was clear. Oh, I just, stunning and brave. The digital landscape is unwell, and companies like yours is unwell. And companies like yours have a chance to reconsider your role in funding and supporting online platforms that have contributed to, stoked, and created the conditions. This is all fluff to manipulate you to drive policy change. I'm not even going to read it. It's just so irrelevant. All of this is irrelevant. This has nothing to do with us as people. Nothing. If we were to consider our freedoms, then we wouldn't even have to be concerned about social media platforms, because you have the freedom to and the option to switch off and to not be connected. I know, right? It's crazy. You have the option to parent your children. I know, right? I know it's hard to fathom. You have the right to therapy. You have the right to freedom of speech and opinion. And even though I don't like abuse online and I've dealt with it myself, it's still freedom, isn't it? It's still a free world. And I'm not going to stop it. And yet seemingly this is all relevant to policy change and social media redesign. This is where I got the Tyler Perry location, living situation. This article proves that from Axios. I wonder who Axios is owned by. I'm sure it's all connected. That they're privately advocating for Stop Hate for Profit campaign, which includes a boycott of Facebook. 2020. So she's supposedly pregnant before she had the miscarriage. She's pregnant right now. And she is about to move house only a couple of days after this. And what else is there? Oh, she's living at Tyler Perry's house and they're scared for privacy. You know, they're triggered. They've been triggered since May on Fauci's birthday. When all the helicopters appeared and, oh, God, it was tragic. And they've been calling up and trying to advocate for policy change the whole time. Policy change regarding social media. So when they had one child and before they used the excuse of having children, back then it used to be the social media issue was the fact that Nut was bullied and attacked. That was the reason why they had to change those social media. It just continues. It just changes over and over. So that was it, Daily Mail. And then she was, just really upset because that was her life not on the line. Let's be honest. She hasn't stopped, has she? No one's stopped any of this. And it keeps going and going and going. Nothing's changed. So it's all for policy change. So the same narrative as just that previous article, over the past few weeks, the couple has encouraged CEOs around the world. So basically within the last 4 weeks of June, late June, so pretty much all of June, they were advocating for and encouraging CEOs around the world to stand in solidarity with a coalition of civil rights groups like the NAACP, Colour of Change, Colour of Change, interesting, and the Anti-Defamation League, which began urging marketers to stop buying ads on Facebook. She and Prince Harry have been working with leaders pursuing racial and civil justice. Oh, so they're using her race as well, which is that whole Colour for Change, isn't it? And any sort of discrimination kind of organizations, they're using her ethnicity now, her Nigerian, of course, her Nigerian roots, to help with the cause as well, to push for policy change. What representation? I'm in the same company in April 2024, so this year, told us about the new effort to inoculate US voters against AI misinformation, led by none other than Todd Nutt through the shell charity organisation Archewell. Something strikingly similar to what happened in Australia. Working to prepare US voters for a possible deepfake onslaught at the campaign year, as the campaign year goes into high gear. Unbelievable. Let's just see here. All three have joined a 20-firm coalition. So this is not the first time either that Todd and Nutt have been a part of a coalition. And we'll get to that in a minute, in America. But they've joined a 20-firm coalition, pledged to combat deceptive AI election content. Right, Todd and Nutt, their Archewell Foundation, so basically Todd and Nutt, because Archewell is a shell, is also helping brainstorm new content. So that falls in line with them designing social media content and social media platforms, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. Let's go back to the late June Stop Hate for Profit campaign, which formed a coalition of all of these, let's say, organizations, wink, like Colour for Change, or it was Colour for Change, wasn't it? Etc., etc. Back in 2020, when Nutt was pregnant with her second child, supposedly, and they were living in Tyler Perry's home, afraid for their life, watching the helicopters go by, afraid for Fauci, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, very stressed. Do you remember? And stressed about the court, the case with Daily Mail, just stressed, really, really stressed. Going back to that, Todd was partnering and chatting part of the coalition with Aspen Digital. And what's funny is August the 10th, so days after Nut's supposed miscarriage, is when they've posted this. And WEF's Aspen Institute, or Digital, sparks policy action for our world. Not America, not just America, for our world. It says here that they were chatting for months prior to August the 10th. Rashad Robinson, which you'll see in clips about, I think his, you'll see it. It's awful stuff. I think I've got it probably connected to this thread. Prince Harry and I have been talking about online hate for a few months now. He got that so many of these issues are about power. Which one? Hard power? And you're displaying soft power. Is that correct? Led by Jeremy Hyman's Davos, WEF, the Crown, the monarchy. Facebook knows what the problems are, but chooses to do nothing about it. Yeah. Just white people problems all round, created from nothing, come out of nowhere. Big issues. So for months they were talking. So that would be right at the start of, well, August is the 8th month. You would be going back to May. May when, they were stressing over those helicopters and Fauci's first birthday. And when Nut was pregnant, supposedly. Wink, 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 wink. So since 2020, with causality continuously added on, excuses, reasons, depends on the narrative changing, of course, Todd just conducted foreign interference in now the US and UK, and, by last year, Australia, and I'm sure there's Canada and New Zealand involved somehow, pushing to change government policy. He has had insider information, excuse Hastings, such as political coups, and he is advocating and designing our WEF information regulated future. My thoughts. See how this is one big club. Here we are on November 3rd, 2021, and we have the same company where Todge was talking about in January, about January 6th riots. That's the one he had that interview with. This is this very same company. He joined this company again for an exclusive panel on misinformation. And Aspen Digital's Rashad Robinson, so the guy that had been speaking to had been speaking to Todge for months, probably since around May 2020. Now in November 2021, they're having a chat again. And why it's Stephen Levi? Oh my God, what a coincidence. It's miraculous. Maybe it was the same chat. Maybe it was. Actually, that would make sense, because wasn't that the time that Todge and Nut were meant to be in New York in Netflix? Or was that 2022? Oh, who cares? But for our rights, so for 3 years, the monarchy has allowed this to happen. Foreign interference, treachery, high treason. And in my posts back in the day, October 2023, I ask the royal family, the UK Parliament, 10 Downing Street, and Rishi Sunak, why have they allowed this to happen? And I ask as well, like, how are they impartial to the UK online safety bill they're trying to pass? No response, of course. And I also directed it to my government and to the FBI as to why they've allowed foreign interference and influence to be conducted when it's both against Australian and American laws and rights. But there you go. You can have a look at this link here if you would like to read more. Combating foreign influence. This is supposedly meant to be a thing, of course. Targeting US officials and other US persons through traditional intelligence tradecraft. So how's this happened? Here's an Home Affairs Oz link to the Criminal Code Act 1995, Section 80 in Australia. You can have a look at that if you would like. You can look, just Google it. Oh, that's so interesting. I look up this time, I go into this Time article, and the first thing I see is the Great Reset in partnership with Sompo Holdings. Wonderful. Oh, the Great Reset. It is the Great Reset. Oh, so they literally tell you. they literally tell you that Nut and Todge are pushing global policy change for the Great Reset. Oh, that's good. I don't have to do the work. They've done it for me. Todge and Nut discuss misinformation with Silicon Valley's biggest critics. Do tell. Oh, October 2020. So Nut is meant to be, over a month pregnant or 2 months pregnant by this point with Fiblet. Yeah. The Social Dilemma. If you watch my high treason video, The Social Dilemma was done by Jeremy Hymans and Purpose, and Reset Australia was a part of it. One big club. So this was actually to push the policy change and to start the discourse, the public discourse globally. Through Netflix as well. Partnered with Netflix to do this. I'm just having a read and just trying to pick out anything interesting. Oh yes, Noble touched on Nut's own experience being the target of online hate. Do you see? I told you. They're using the narrative, well, the current narrative at the time. It was race and it was online hate. If you are part of a community targeted with hate, it's so disingenuous and it's so shallow that this is what's so interesting. When this all first started and the curtsy happened, and when I started this whole thing of being furious and wanting to debunk everything to protect the monarchy, because at that time I actually believed the narrative, I had this niggling feeling that something wasn't right because it was so shallow and so staged. But at the time I believed that it was just like a facade creation and that she had created a narrative, and I wanted to debunk that narrative to attack the royal family, to attack my monarchy. But now you see how it's all being played out, and even now with all the policy change and everything else, it's still so disingenuous, and it's been like that for several years, and that's why people don't let this fucking thing go. And it makes me really upset. Like, really upset. These people play with our freedoms and our rights, and it's just so upsetting. And they manipulate us to believe absolute bullshit and drama and gossip. Sorry. If you're part of a community targeted with hate, disinformation, calls for genocide. What? Calls for racist violence against you, misogyny. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't. I just can't. I mean, Ngozi Fulani in UK helped with that, didn't she? And the brooch on an outdoor jacket by Princess of Kent. How funny. Can't even be realistic because that brooch wouldn't have even been on her when she took the jacket off or the coat off to go inside for the Christmas luncheon. She wouldn't even be wearing it across the table from Nut. So how she could have a racist attack on her over a brooch on an outdoor coat is beyond me. Absolutely beyond me and beyond you. But do you see how this is all played out? So that was UK psyops there. Directly. Had nothing to do with the US. And you question the royal family's role in this. Targeted hate, disinformation, calls for genocide. Yeah. So calls for genocide. That's what Nuts endured, supposedly. And misogyny. Even though she's a female independent entrepreneur, bananatarian, warrior, intelligent, elegant, graceful, everything you want to be for a biracial Nigerian woman in America, doing her bit just to contribute to society and force policy changes in Commonwealth nations, especially in African countries with vaccines, to force genocide. So the very thing she's trying to represent herself as, she's partaking in. You want to talk about evil? This is pure evil. You want to talk about Bill Gates? Yeah. I don't need to say much more. As Megan, I know you so profoundly. The technologies are able to amplify those kinds of messages and those kinds of harms. The harms don't just live in the platform. They often extend to shaping behaviours that people also act upon. Give us examples, mate. Like, literally give us examples. Are you talking about Pornhub and masturbating? Or are you talking about, like, having a chat and then going, and, I don't know, having a school shooting? Like, what are you talking about here? Honestly. Any neurological disorder, any psychopathy, anything like that is done through childhood and upbringing. It has nothing to do with online platforms. Nothing to do with it. This is disgraceful. Harris added that the technology company's profit imperative thrives on disinformation, controversial opinions, or fake news. Yeah, so this whole narrative of Nut is fake news. Megxit was fake news. Daily Mail just proved it by saying they had moved straight from UK to US 5 years ago in 2019. So that would mean there was no Canada. I mean, Todger's already said it in Netflix that there was no Canada. That they moved from when Fauci was 5 months old to the US from Windsor. So, you want to talk about fake news, misinformation and disinformation? Righto. I'm just trying to get back to where I am. It thrives on disinformation, controversial opinions, or fake news. They are competing to seduce us with what promise of virality? Seduce us. I love how does the fake news and misinformation, does that seduce children as well? Because, I mean, this is for everyone, isn't it? He says, citing the hashtags that promise billions of views on a single TikTok video. Oh, God. Yeah, we're forced to watch TikTok. But, of course, that doesn't reward what's true, what's credible, or what is good, really good for society, mate, what is really good for society, you shouldn't be controlling society. How about that? Isn't this what you call a democracy? Even if it's a cosplay democracy, that is what we are under, is it not? And though he suggests that people try to take back control of what content they do and don't choose to consume, ultimately, which is so funny considering everything that COVID is now, which is complete mis and disinformation about what COVID was, and all of these attacks and migration issues, all PSYOPs events, everything on their wars. They don't complain about that, do they? They just want to control true information and take and give you completely false brainwashings. It's up to the tech companies to make it oppressive, to make it a personal responsibility for a systemic oppressive issue. Do you really think we're oppressed? I think we're moving more to oppression. Do you really think we're oppressed? Do you think gays are oppressed? Depends on the country, of course, but in the Five Eyes, do you think gays are oppressed? They now have pride concerts. I had a situation where there was a human resources celebrated for Pride Month a gay staff member doing a strip dance in his G-string and high heels on a pole. Do you think that was brave and stunning? Do you think, sexual abuse victims weren't triggered? Do you think that's okay? But do you think we're oppressed, really? We're not oppressed. What they're trying, which is really interesting, because if they wanted to kind of strengthen this argument, it would be that we have too much freedom and that there needs to be some sort of measurements put in place. But they're going with oppression, which is, you can tell it's a complete and utter fabrication. It's up to tech companies to self-regulate their content, or failing that, governments to step in and impose restrictions. Wow. 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 That's very self-explanatory, is it not? And then the next sentence, Todger nut in it. Asked how the truth might win over virility. Both Noble and Harris cast doubts as to whether the tech companies could be trusted to self-police. So really they're pushing for government reform because they're trying to persuade you and manipulate you, the people, into believing the tech companies are all about profits and they're all about themselves, a law unto themselves, and that there needs to be government reform to control you. And you want this. Noble argues they have failed to do so, calling them foxes guarding the henhouse. Yep, self-explanatory. To stop hate for profit page. To pause advertising for July 2020. They called on companies to pause advertising. The list below includes the businesses that participated and joined this campaign, some who continue to pause their advertising on the platform. Aspen. I'm going through this so in case you spot anything, you have the power to do so. I think the reason I think I know the reason why I've put this here. Wow. Pfizer. That was it, wasn't it? Pfizer. 2020. Quicksilver, that's a shame. Used to be Australian. SAP. Jesus. The Body Shop used to be Australian. A lot of universities. Upwork. Volkswagen, of course. Of course. I think that's it. It's interesting though how Nut and Todge have not disclosed anything about this coalition and this campaign in their Netflix, on their website. Nothing. They have not listed it. Stop Hate for Profit is a diverse and growing coalition that wants Facebook to take common sense steps. This is when they tried to have a chat with Elon, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, that would have been a bit later when he took over Twitter. September the 14th, 2020, just before Nut and Todge went to the beach to tell each other that she was pregnant with Fiblet. An article showing 11th August 2020 that Todge was already discussing. So we've gone from the first video 2020, he was redesigning social media. He literally tells us this. Literally. So before the J6 riots, the coup, and him having insider intelligence information, he was redesigning, or wants to redesign social media, but then tells you he's been doing it in 2023. Todge has called for a reform of social media to make it more a welcoming place to be. He wants to redesign social media. Yep, so this is the same old thing. The digital landscape is unwell. Last year, the Duke and Duchess backed a coalition effort to rein in online hate speech that Colour of Change helped lead. Colour of Change policy lead, simultaneously representing Aspen Digital, which is that Rashad Robinson, much like Jeremy Hyman's with Purpose and Reset Australia. Let's have a look here. This is the terrible website of Archwell. March 25th, 2021. Racial justice, mental health, and the future of media. See how their narratives have played an important role in these policy changes. Our partners. Let's scroll down. UCLA. Oh, wow, Central Kitchen, of course. Colour of Change. United behind a force of more than 7 million members, Colour of Change is the largest online racial justice organisation in the US. Their mission is centered on turning moments of injustice into movements for change, mobilizing people to create a more human and less hostile world for Black people in America. Last year, the Duke and Duchess backed a coalition effort to rein in online hate speech that Colour of Change helped lead. It's interesting that a lot of these organisations are also UK organisations still involved in the UK as non-working members, non-working royals, supposedly. Do you see how it's played out across the Five Eyes? Oh. EU, UN, WEF and Trudeau simultaneously demand crackdown, on independent news and podcasting. October 2nd, 2023. So, in light of all this, I probably want to finish it off by explaining to you that this seems to be a whole network. Aspen, Purpose, Oz Reset, Netflix, Colour for Change. They seem to all be interdependent of one another, helping each other out, creating this world of information control through manipulation and deception, of trying to empower the public and the individual, which is not true at all. They're trying to force upon you a mindless understanding of what's taken place so that they can change policy, much like the feminism movement and the African American movement in the 60s and everything else that's changed policy or taxes for profit, and made things a lot more harder for us. So this is one thing I want to explain to you. So there was a GPF19 event. So in 2019 there was an event called Global, let me have a look here. Global Philanthropy Forum. So it's all in the name of philanthropy, much like Jane Goodall, who's been promoted, of course, through many various globalist platforms. Philanthropy. And there was a forum in 2019. And here you see, for example, Jane Wales, the founder of the forum, and who led the forum, with Jonathan Visbal, chairman of the board of directors of World Affairs. Anyway, we'll move forward. Here you're going to see none other than Jeremy Hymans for Purpose, and he gives a presentation on soft power and the use of soft power to, they think through philanthropy, they're saying to empower the individual and social movements, but really it's to manipulate you to follow their policies or their pushes for change. Now, this man was partnered with Archwell and Todge and Nutt for the Australian Report and Foreign Interference Treachery. He's Australian. I think he was born in Australia. I'm not too sure, but he was an Australian citizen solely, and then in 2012 became an American citizen, dual or not dual. And at this same event, you have Aspen Institute. As we work to build a more inclusive America. Like America isn't inclusive enough. We appreciated all of the conversations about philanthropy's role in our democracy, including around issues of pluralism and religious pluralism in particular. Oh, so back then they were talking about religion and how that feeds into policy change. Interesting. There is an inherent tension between treating all citizens as equal value versus feeling loyalty to your own tribe. However, when it comes to polity? I don't even know if that's a word. You need to come in with the inclusion and equity lens, and this is difficult. How you don't see that as strategy to manipulate you is beyond me. That's Aspen Institute. It's one big club. And we are definitely not invited. And I thought I'd include a clip of the Aspen Institute's Rashad Robinson also proving that he was the president for Colour of Change, on top of, at the same time, being involved in Aspen Institute, both partnering with Archewell, Nutt and Todge for policy change. In December 2021, he calls for stronger social media oversight. The lie that we simply need to put more control in the hands of users is like stacking our supermarket shelves with poison and expired food and saying we're simply giving consumers more choice.
Responsible for what you sell. Big tech corporations sell content. That is their main product. Congress must allow judges, juries, regulators, and government enforcers to do their jobs, to determine what's hurting people and stop it, and hold the responsible parties liable. Responsibility without accountability isn't responsibility at all. Congress must enable proper enforcement. I want to applaud this committee for ensuring that the Build Back Better legislation includes funding for the FTC. The next step is making sure the FTC hires staff with true civil rights expertise. Laws and regulations must be crystal clear. Big tech products must be subject to regulatory scrutiny and approval before they're released onto the public and hurt people.
Sounds like he's acting like Oz Rees said. I wonder who he's backed by. I wonder if it's global companies.
Just like a drug formula should be approved.
Oh, and thus being foreign interference in America. Maybe the Royal Grift and the Duchess of Narcissex can look into this.
By the FDA, tech products need to pass inspection, an independent auditing process that exposes what they would like to hide. But regulators can't fall for shifting the burden and blame to consumers. The lie that we simply need to put more control in the hands of users is like stacking our supermarket shelves with poison and expiring food and then saying we are simply giving consumers more choice.
Which you do anyway. And here's Rashad Robinson having a throwback conversation in 2020 regarding all of that stuff with Prince Harry last year. Last year, I spoke with Harry about the intersection between civil rights and technology, and he summed up that systemic racism exists because someone is benefiting from it. What is he talking about? How does racism exist? Because Twitter exists because they're profiting off of a social media platform.
Work that white people have to do is the work to act.
Hold on. He just said white people. So he himself is being racist and segregating us, segregating white people with black people. Well, and placing them apart to convey his message. This is what I don't get. Like, I think there's a lot of different identity politics in America compared to Australia. We don't have this. They're trying to push it. They've been trying to push it for the last, couple of years because of globalism and the policy change. They're trying to make it across Five Eyes, and they're trying to make it an issue, which it isn't. So they've been trying with all these psyops and stuff like that. But it's not an issue in Australia compared to America. But I'm just surprised this guy is allowed to say something like this. This is what I don't get.
to work to undo the systems and the structures that have created the problem, because racism is not simply about my individual acts of prejudice. It is about a system that rewards it, that prioritizes it, that allows it to be beneficial. And then
Actually, racism is usually about being oppressed by a bigger, privileged populace. And at the moment, you're the one who looks like the bigger, more powerful populace. Look, yeah, I won't even get into that. Because it's not my country, and it's not my political, my identity politics. I won't go into it. But he's definitely not oppressed. Let's just say that. And this is definitely not racism.
And then that system replicating itself over and over again in deeply hostile ways.
This is now the opportunity to take that moment and be able to educate ourselves and to learn. You can't just sit back and go, oh, I knew this was a problem, but it looks like it's being fixed. It's like, no, that's why it's still around. You know, systemic racism is.
By the way, that background of Todge is from, well, we don't know if it was Tyler Perry's home, but that's definitely the background with all the footage during the same time as when they were meant to be at Tyler Perry's home. So this was in May, June, as they've promoted. So at Tyler Perry's home, and he's talking about this stuff while he's supposedly stressed for his wife, who is about to have a miscarriage.
It still exists because someone is benefiting from it.
Part of this sort of
Pathetic.
work.
The November chat with Rewired was in fact the time where Todge decided to chip in about the J6 event, and Rashad's there, of course. I don't know how this is not considered collusion.
And I want to push back against this. I want to push back against this idea that you're not regulated. You actually are not immune to actually being accountable to civil rights law, for instance. And you are not immune if you print and you amplify and move things that are deeply untrue, and you're not immune from consequences. And so the sort of level of immunity that platforms have is quite different than media. And having been back and forth with these companies where they have said up front that they are not media, and have made it clear that they're not media, the money and the paid advertisement and the money that can be put behind the kind of targeted approach to move content, the surveillance data mining, all makes these companies very different than media. And freedom of speech is not freedom from the consequences of speech. And I think we have to sort of remember that, and remember that as much as we absolutely, and as much as a civil rights leader, I want to defend the ability for us to express our will for a better future through civil rights. I also don't think my civil rights should
Hilarious with what I'm about to show you with Aspen Institute and the Twitter files.
be valued so that companies in Silicon Valley can make more money.
You know, in television, and I was around newsrooms most of my childhood. The idea that the FBI might call up and say, hey, you might want to think about not doing this story, that would be crazy. I couldn't have even imagined an editor or a news director who would have even taken that call, you know, in that way. And we found in the Twitter files all kinds of things that suggested that this relationship was not only tolerated, but that it was ongoing, regular, and collusive in a way that was kind of shocking to me. I think
what's a specific example of that?
A great example.
So I apologize. I may have got CIA and FBI wrong. Had them, you know, had my lines crossed regarding the J6 information leak to Todge. But anyway, let us continue.
Example of this was the Aspen Institute tabletop exercise, which was technically not set up by the government. It was set up by the Aspen Institute, which is funded by the government in collaboration with some academic institutions that had been briefed by the FEC and some government agencies, but they all got together before the release of the Hunter Biden story. They were briefed by current and former government officials who talked about the possibility that a hack and leak story involving Hunter Biden and Burisma might come out, and they kind of war gamed the possibility of what to do about that story. And then a month later, that story happens. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, if I...
Freedom of speech, guys, remember? Our civil rights. Aspen Institute, Rashad Robinson was talking about. And here they are, controlling everything that comes out, everything that comes in. How to respond, inside information, collusion.
If I had been in that room and that story actually happened a month later, I would feel obligated to do a story about that tabletop exercise. I would say, hey, what a weird coincidence that this thing happened. But these people had, an off-the-record arrangement with everybody.
And isn't Todge not on the board of Aspen Institute? He would have all this information.
Were in the room with, and they kept to it. They kept quiet, and that's a completely new level of cooperation and coordination that I would never have imagined.
So FBI, like government officials, Aspen Institute, colluding together. Todge is the board member of Aspen Institute, and your freedom of speech is in America is the topic of conversation since 2020. And you wonder why they relocated to the USA, if they relocated at all. Especially if, as Barkjack said, the royal family and monarchy are partnering with social media to monitor social media continuously without an end date, under the reason of I can't even remember. It's not even valid.
I'm being naive about that. Mm-hmm. Again, I grew up in the media. My father was, in it was set up by the Aspen Institute. Before the release of the Hunter Biden story, they were briefed by current and former government. And then a month later, that story happens. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, if I had been in that room and that story actually happened a month later, I would feel obligated to do a story about that tabletop exercise. I would say, hey, what a weird coincidence that this thing happened. But these people had, an off-the-record arrangement with everybody they were in the room with, and they kept to it. They kept quiet, and that's a completely new level of cooperation and coordination that I would never have imagined.
That's what you call censorship, coordinated censorship, which is exactly what they're promoting through policy change and saying that it's at the cost of you, which isn't true at all. And I think we're done here. One big club